Ooh. It's recording. Thank you for watching this video. I'm using this studio because the neighborhood wherein my usual studio was getting a little bit too loud. People riding around on probably not street legal four-wheelers, revving the engines and playing their sounds that are not worthy to be called music very loud. I watched a debate and I have some thoughts about it, and those who are used to my channel are going to be surprised it's not a Kent Hovind debate. Although one of the people in this debate had previously debated Kent Hovind, which helped to catch my eye and get my interest in it. The two people involved in this debate are Nathaniel Jeanson of Answers in Genesis, who has a doctorate degree from Harvard, and Dr. Herman Mays, who is a professor at Marshall University with a doctorate degree from the University of Kentucky. This debate happened in September of 2018. The premise of the debate, usually debates are focused on one question or one issue. And this one was the fact that Nathaniel Jeanson has written a book named Replacing Darwin. And so that was supposed to be the subject of this debate. Is his book good, bad, scientific, unscientific? A debate about it. So specifics about this page says this wrong, this page. Dr. Mays apparently didn't get the memo because he never cited Nathaniel Jeanson's book. He did make some generalities about it, but he never cited this specific page. Just said, here's why. Alright, let's get into the debate. The debate started off with approximately half-hour long initial presentations. Nathaniel Jeanson went first. He pointed out that science has changed over the thousands of years. The Greeks used something that we call deductive reasoning, but the current scientific method is only hundreds of years old. One fact about the current scientific method is something must be falsifiable to be considered scientific. Falsifiable means false. You can prove it false. There could be, hypothetically, something that could prove something false. Darwin did do some things right, and we got to give him credit for that. Maybe I'll make a separate video on my thoughts about Charles Darwin. But Nathaniel Jeanson gave him some credit. There was a false idea that some Christians have had that God created it's less common now than it used to be, every single species of animal the way it is now, way back when he did the creating, and there's been no changes since then. But that belief is not based on something explicit in the Bible. The Bible does allow for God to have created a variety of original animals which have now diversified and speciated. Now this diversification and speciation would not change what kind of animal it is. The different varieties of bears would still be from one common bear, hypothetically or potentially, and have not become whales or something like that. Carl Linnaeus, who devised the classification system we use, he's one who used to have that false belief, but by the end of his life, he believed that there is a potential for animals to speciate, to have some changes. That's important because the story of the worldwide flood and Noah's Ark, and yes, it was a worldwide flood, Hugh Ross followers, is more plausible when we find out that Noah only had to bring one set of deer. Well, actually it was 14 of the clean kind, but he didn't need to bring 14 Sitka black-tailed deer, and 14 Columbia black-tailed deer, and 14 of the white-tail like they have in Texas, and 14 of the white-tail that are more like the ones in Quebec, he was able to bring a smaller number of animals than that, which have since speciated. Jeanson acknowledged that Henry Morris and Duane Gish in the past did not have a scientific model when they were doing their work. In his book, he says he made some predictions. I have not read this book. I hope to get around to it. I don't have a copy of it right now. If I do read this book and find out that Dr. Mays did actually make reference to it, I will make an apology video. But right now, we'll get to more to Dr. Mays. But it looks like Dr. Mays did not read the book. He definitely did not cite it one time, say, on a certain page. I didn't see him cite it at all. It seemed like he didn't use the book at all in his presentation. Okay, so here are the predictions that Nathaniel Jeanson makes. 1. The rate of speciation. 2. Mitochondrial DNA mutation rates. 3. Nuclear DNA function. 4. Relationship between nuclear DNA heterozygosity and MT, probably mitochondrial DNA mutation rates. 5. Does nuclear DNA and mitochondrial DNA contain the stamp of civilization? Now, he explained why there are reasons we should revisit Darwin. 1. Darwin took a scientific risk. We have more information now than Charles Darwin had. To Charles Darwin's defense, he was working with the available information at his time. Some of what Charles Darwin wrote was more reasonable, based on information available back then. 2. Creation science has changed. Things are different. Duane Ken Ham and Nathaniel Jeanson are not Duane Gish. Let's see. Creation science is making testable retrodictions and predictions that are successful. Alright. Well, some scientists make a big deal about predictions. I think that's overrated. More important if you're dealing with reality. But since we do have predictions being made, that should be taken into account. Alright. Now, here's my thoughts or notes about Dr. Mays' introductory thing. He used a lot of two logical fallacies. One is the straw man fallacy. More than once, Nathaniel Jeanson said, "I didn't write that, that's not in my book," or some synonym of those sentences. And who am I going to believe? Dr. Mays, as in previous presentations I've seen of his, and some things he did on this one, give me reason to doubt his integrity. The other one, ad hominem. Right out of the gate, the first thing Dr. Mays did was ad hominem. And he was trying to make it look like he wasn't doing an ad hominem. You know, he said, Nathaniel Jeanson does not take part in pseudoscience. That almost sounds like a compliment until he followed that up with, it's quasi-science. And he has no expertise in the things he's talking about. That's ridiculous. He's got a doctorate degree in cell biology or DNA, and he doesn't have expertise about DNA and life? Wow. But there's a saying that we stand on the shoulders of giants. Technology and science do build on past learning. That's a fact. Dr. Herman Mays accused Nathaniel Jeanson of not doing that, of kicking the giants, of walking away from the giants, not metaphorically standing on their shoulders. That's a lie. That's not a accusation that he really has any basis for. Nathaniel Jeanson is building on scientific discoveries. If he were not building on scientific discoveries, he would say DNA is protoplasm and worthless and doesn't do anything. He took time out of his presentation to go after answers in Genesis. Maybe I should make a video of what I think about them. He accused them of not being a museum. They do run a museum. I've never been to it, but that is a really harsh accusation that it's not even worthy to be called a museum. Even bad museums still are museums. Even museums that are average or have room for improvement are still museums. They don't do research. They do research. That's why they have so many scientists working for them. Duh. Dr. Mays posited that the phylogenetic trees that people draw support evolution. No, they don't. A drawing is only evidence if the drawer saw it. If he's testifying or repeating what he saw. Nobody saw a single-cell animal become anything other than another single-cell animal. Nobody has seen a cow or a dog give birth to a whale. So any line on a paper between those things is not based on what somebody saw. It doesn't prove anything. He claims that Nathaniel Jeanson does not learn about the history of genes or care about the history of genes. No, the history of genes. Now, you got to be honest. When you look at something right now, you don't know its history. Just looking at something now, you got to be honest. Even if you think you're sure about the history, there's limits to how much of the history you can figure out from just looking at something in its present state. Hello. We'll see who gets to him first, because I'm using the quiet parking lot to make a video because our neighborhood was too loud to try to make a video. The Best Buy parking lot, which does not have the cord we need, so we're going to have to go to Amazon for the cord. Alright, good. Yes, get him. Get him. Alright, love you, bye-bye. Okay, now, in Dr. Mays' previous, I don't want to call it a debate because he didn't even try to debate, some metaphorical slaughtering, example of Dr. Mays not being intellectual versus somebody who was using his intellect. He had these graphs that he claimed disproved a common designer. The graph was one color. It was black lines for what you would expect with a common designer and gray lines for what you find when you compare DNA. But I knew that was a stupid and bad graph before when I saw it, but Dr. Mays didn't give much explanation. So I was, there was room for my understanding of what he was thinking, why he was thinking that you would get certain things with a common designer versus a common ancestor. He gave more of an explanation in this debate about those graphs. And the thing is, there are more similarities. There should be less similarities, according to him, if there is a common designer. Less similarities if there's a common designer, more similarities if there's a common ancestor. As if there's some law of physics that prevents people, a designer, a human or a supernatural designer, from making things similar. I'm in a parking lot now. I am surrounded by cars with round wheels. According to Herman Mays, these cars could not have been designed, could not have had a designer, could not have had factories making them, because those wheels are round on every single one of them, and a lot of them have the same size wheels. According to Herman Mays' logic that he used in making these charts, if these cars surrounding me had a designer, he would have to have. It would be against the laws of physics, have to have designed things dramatically differently. so that you would see 1,000 different shapes of wheels, you know, from one-sided all the way up to 1,000-sided, and maybe some spoked, some wheels that are spokes without a rim. But wow, that's ludicrous. A designer can obviously design things however he wants and reuse parts. His chart was about apes, which is a straw man attack, or a straw man fallacy, because creationists do believe that there has been speciation and diversification. But if you can still say, but it is still a this, then macroevolution hasn't happened. Maybe all the apes do have a common ape ancestor. So it's a straw man attack. It's not attacking what creationists believe. If you prove all the apes have a common ancestor, they might. It was an ape. And guess what it created? Apes. Dr. Herman Mays denounced Richard Dawkins and Dr. Coyne, I forget Coyne's first name, and a couple of other prominent atheist evolutionists for... I'm not fully understanding what he was denouncing them for. I reject his denouncement. Richard Dawkins, I respect Richard Dawkins more than Dr. Herman Mays. But Dr. Herman Mays, thanks for at least coming on with these debates. There are some people that won't even do that. He claimed the deductive approach is a scientific method. That's not a test. I think this is what would happen, is not a test. A test is, let's get the chemicals together. Let's get the animal in a place where we can see what happens to it. That's a scientific test, not, I think that this would happen and that would happen, which is what the deductive approach is. Multiple times Nathaniel asked for specific criticisms of his book and got none. And he openly questioned whether Dr. Mays had read his book because Dr. Mays was not making any specific accusations or questions or criticisms about his book. And that was supposed to be the point of the debate, the subject of the debate. Mays did at one point ask a question and not give Nathaniel a chance to answer. Cut him off before he was done answering. Nathaniel multiple times accused Herman Mays of misrepresenting him. Oh yeah, one of the ridiculous things that Herman Mays said was, well, one thing Nathaniel does is when he measures mutation rates, he gets a pedigree. He finds out whose DNA he's looking at, so he knows how many generations he's looking at. That's science. That's measuring it. You can't measure something without a ruler, without a known length of time. You can't measure a rate without a known distance. You know, if I have no idea how far it is from California to New Jersey, and I find out that it took you, 4 days to drive from California to New Jersey, and let's see, and we're somewhere else, and then find out how long it took you to drive from Florida to Georgia. Let's see. Well, you need to know how far things are. You need to know rates. For me to say how fast you're driving, I would need to know how far those things are apart. If it took you 4 days to drive from Florida to Georgia, I can't say, wow, you drove at the same rate in both things. So it's extremely stupid and unscientific and disingenuous of Herman Mays to say when you're studying the rates of mutation, you should not look at pedigrees. How do you know the rate if you don't know how far things are? Dr. Herman Mays instead wanted to test it based on assumptions of evolution and how long evolution takes. And then Herman Mays said it's not circular to not measure the distance of rate, but start out knowing how many millions of years ago something happened, and then basing your rate on that known millions of years. Herman Mays did not want to actually measure mutation rates. That's science. Finding out by measuring, observing. Nathaniel accused Herman of not reading or citing any of his predictions. Okay, Herman Mays said when you compare mutation rates, you must count the dead zygotes to figure out the rates. No, you don't. You get the mutation rate if you count the children that survived. That's ridiculous. Okay, the moderators of the debate had a question at the end, and they asked Nathaniel why he did not send his book or ask for input from groups like BioLogos, who are worthless. Oh, did I say that? I have a strong negative opinion of BioLogos. But as opposed to, Nathaniel pointed out that he has sent his books to famous evolutionists like Richard Dawkins. I think he said Richard Dawkins and is it Jerry Coyne? Evolutionist scientist, last name Coyne, and others like that to get their input, because he's being scientific and he wants input, he wants feedback. He's willing to listen to somebody who disbelieves the things he believes about what his test results were and his scientific method and things like that. That's science, by the way. And I think Nathaniel Jeanson deserves great respect for that. He's being a real scientist. He's willing to listen to the other side of the debate. That's very respectable. But I don't think he has any moral obligation to go to theistic evolutionist. I'm sorry, I just repeated myself. Yeah, I really didn't mean to say that. But people who say that the Bible is, pure metaphor and never anything literal or historical, like BioLogos. But Nathaniel did answer why he hasn't gone to BioLogos. He has met people from BioLogos. He went out to lunch with one guy who's from BioLogos and had a debate with him. And Nathaniel Jeanson said BioLogos does not read his things. It's obvious from his conversation at lunch with a person from BioLogos and a debate he had with somebody from BioLogos that they don't read his stuff anyway. They don't read it. So why send things to people who aren't going to read it and read your stuff? Mays refused to accept the falsifiability of Nathaniel Jeanson's his hypothesis and theories. That's not very scientific of him. So, those are my thoughts on this debate. Thank you for watching my thoughts on this debate. I'm going to put a link in the comments so you can see the debate for yourself if you would like. A link or URL. Sometimes I try to make a link and I end up just copying the URL. There's room for improvement in my computer skills. And limited time for me to improve my computer skills because YouTube has made me $0. I've got a real job I've got to spend time with. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.